Mike?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I just had a quick question. As we start to grow, we're probably going to end the year around 700,000 this year.
Cool.
And our big issue right now is we're doing a mixture of project based like patio, softscape, and also like shrub trimming and bush and bed programs with the same crew. But what we're starting to see is, we might have 4 weeks of project based work, and someone's not going to wait that long to get the shrubs trimmed. What would you recommend in that point where we don't have, say, the work in that specific project base to keep a dedicated crew busy in that sector just yet?
Yeah, so the challenging part when you have dedicated crews is that what you're really doing is you're having to manage multiple wait times, or you're having to manage multiple budget hour capacities is what the language I would use, because you might be booked out 4 weeks for a certain type of service, 2 weeks for a different type of service, and 3 months for a different type of service. So the challenging part, and not to say that you should not, have the, have this in dedicated crews, but what you have to keep in mind is the fact that you literally can't say I'm booked out 3 weeks. You're gonna have to say I'm booked out 2 weeks for this service, 4 weeks for this service, and 8 weeks for this service. What you're going to want to do is track that over time, and then make sure that your labor matches those ebbs and flows of demand for specific services. And then what you can do is cross train a few of your crew to be able to move guys in between the crews, but not the entire crew. Because if you're trying like, hey, I want to dedicate this crew to hardscaping, great. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 or 3 of them, maybe out of 5 or 6, and cross train them on bush trimming, so that when the bush trimming guys get crazy busy, I can move a couple guys over and somewhat, even out that massive spike in demand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What would you do in like the shorter term if like, for example, we have a project we're going to work on starting next week. That's going to be a week long project. And the one after that is going to be a 4-day project. But in the meantime, we do the simple growth automation. And so we just got a whole flood of bush trimming that came in. So the same guys are going to go put the patios in. I mean, the same guys that are going to do the bushes. And we're just our closing ratio is starting to drop a lot because people aren't willing to wait for those patio guys to go do the trimming. But
yeah, like
we just don't have it.
Yeah, like ultimately, whenever it comes to being booked out a certain, far, eventually you're going to have customers that just do not want to accept the job, especially when it comes to things like overgrown mows, like mowing, bush trimming, any sort of maintenance. To be typical, people don't want to wait 5, 6, 7 weeks. So what you're going to want to do is say, okay, when estimates come into me, I can't just put them on the next available slot. What I need to do is I need to ask myself, okay, is this a project that could be put off 2 months? Because if it is, and it's a paver patio, I'm not going to put them when I actually have availability in 2 weeks. I'm going to put them in 2 months, knowing that there's other services that are more time sensitive that I'm going to leave space for. And this is really important when you go into times people do that offer a large amount of services, or even just a few services, is whatever starts coming in during the beginning of the spring rush, they start putting on the schedule in a more, this one called in first, they accepted, okay, they're next. And it's kind of a first come, first serve basis. That's not how you want to do it. How you want to do it is, how long is this type of work, this type of service able to like, be on the schedule for without them canceling. And if it's a paver patio, etc., you can wait a month, 2 months. I've seen people do 3, 4, 5, 6 months for these bigger projects. Whereas like for bush trimming, you're going to need it right away. So in the short term, what I would do for someone that has more of a crunch when it comes to labor for these specific services, or you have a whole bunch of leads literally waiting for you, is, accepted estimates basically. You're going to want to make sure that you get to the lowest common denominator of labor that you will need to cross-train your team on. And so for bush trimming, for example, you can get someone to be probably do 90% of those bush trimmings within an hour of training. In terms of like, okay, guys, rake out the beds, trim the bushes, haul it to the truck. They're not maybe going to be the best at pruning a fruit tree or trimming a rose bush, etc. But you can get them to the lowest common denominator, so they are effective at working down on that backlog of work that just came in for that service. And so there is going to be either A, you're going to have to throttle leads, and it sounds like right now in the short term you can't because they're already sitting there. The automation went out. But in the long term, you do want to throttle leads of these different types of services so that you don't have this backup. In the more short term, and really as a backup mechanism, you want to cross train some of your guys on the lowest common denominator of the services that are more seasonal. Project-based work, especially in areas where it doesn't snow, you can usually book out way further into the future and not have way less consequences. By the way, another great way to close projects that are weather insensitive is if someone's like worried about price. No, he's Mr. Jones. We could go ahead and give you 10% off of this if you schedule this 5 months from now in the middle of December. And you know that you can do that because that's also when you're slower. So keep that as a kind of a strategy as we head into the second half of the year. If you're booked out way on projects that are not time sensitive and are less maintenance dependent, you can book these out in the future. Make sure that as you head into the spring rush, as you head into any busy season, you are throttling the amount of work that is time sensitive versus the projects that are out into the future. And as your backlog gets shorter and shorter in a time like July, August, everyone's like, oh, my leads are worse. Leads are getting less. And what happens, we start taking all of these leads from all these different services and just putting them on the schedule, first come, first serve. Bad news. And that leads to, again, a massive backlog of work, when in reality, what you could have done is put some of these projects way out into the future, still got the customer to accept, but then take the more time sensitive property cleanups, maintenance type work closer to now.